from this morning's session. One thing you learned from this morning's session, I have quite a full note. Just one thing you learned from this morning's session. If I can go. And yourself. So he says, I think it's important not to debrand yourself. He spoke to us also about accountable governance. Okay, cool. Tiwalade, please, can you just pop it into the chat, please? If you pop it into the chat, it will be easier for us to read it out loud. Okay, I think I'm going to see if we have room, if they're going to unmute you. Control room, are you going to be able to find and unmute Tiwalade? Is that possible? Okay, Tiwalade has raised her hands. I'm not sure if the control room can find and unmute her. If they can't, Tiwalade, may I kindly request that you pop your comments into the chat? That can raise productivity. Vacillating between the governance, the conversation around governance, the conversation about security and prosperity. And then I think that how do we raise our argument? Reminds me of a quote that I heard. It says, don't raise your voice, raise your argument. So I think on that note, we will go straight into the afternoon session. And this afternoon, we are going to have someone speak to us about trade. But right before I get into it, I'd like to thank everyone who has sponsored and supported us through this conference. You would see right on the backdrop, every one of their details are in there. So thank you so much to each one of our partners on this project. There is Stanbic IBTC Bank, there is First Bank, there's BWC Africa, there's CMC Connect, Status Group, Edelman, there's WE Communications, and these are our sponsors. And we also were supported by Provoke Media, The Holmes Report, Ovation Media, Global Alliance, also have the support team to recognize CMC Connect, also to recognize Deborah Raimi, Olawale Taiwo, Olasukomi Oguni, Yemi Oyeleke James, Fola Shade Olu Romi, also to recognize our professional colleagues who have supported us as part of the working committee, Henry Rugamba from Uganda, Mpunga Simokwai from Zambia, and Peter Motie from Kenya. So thank you so much, all our sponsors. Thank you, our colleagues. Thank you also, our coordinator, who I'm sure will come up at some point, Taiwo Tum Karimu. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we're going right straight into our next panelist, our next speaker, beg your pardon. And I'm going to read his profile and then invite him to the virtual stage. So Jesu-Seun Fatoyibo is currently the head of trade for Stanbic IBTC Bank, a subsidiary of Stanbic IBTC, who is a leading end-to-end financial services provider in Nigeria and a member of the Standard Bank Group. He has overall responsibility for strategic direction, development, commercialization, and the health of the traditional and the non-traditional trade finance portfolio. He has over 15 years experience in commercial banking And I think that he has a keen interest in facilitating discussions around trade finance, trade agreements, and he is a speaker, on trade and the AFTA agreement as well. He holds a master's in business admin from the University of Northampton and is a certified documentary credit specialist. And he has been to several executive programs. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please give a virtual round of applause to Jesu Sheung Fatoyibo? Over to you.
Thanks, Inkiru, and thanks for the introduction. Great to see you, I must say. Yeah, so I'm sure you can hear me. And
yes, we can. Shoot, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. And so I should say good afternoon, or should I say good day, because people might be in different geographies. And distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and I'd want to stand on existing protocol and most importantly, wish everyone happy Africa Day. I must say it's quite particularly auspicious that this conference is kicking off on Africa Day 2021. And the theme of the conference also kind of speaks to One Africa, March to Economic Integration and the role of public relations. So it's kind of a beautiful romance, I should say, the topic, the conference, and the celebration of Africa Day. And on that note, I want to congratulate the organizers and for a smooth kickoff, first and foremost, and most importantly, express my best wishes for a successful conference. Now, I've been asked to share my reflections on the benefits and opportunities of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and the benefits to member states. And I've been given 15 minutes to do that. I must confess that upfront anyways, that's a tall order, but I'll try my best within the time frame to articulate my reflections, and I'm happy to take questions subsequently. So just a bit of background or context, and for those who may be coming to this afresh, the agreement was signed in Rwanda, early 2018, and the whole aim or the focus of the Continental Free Trade Agreement for Africa is about promoting free movement of businesses, people, goods, and investment across Africa. As we all know, Africa is a market size of 1.2 billion people with a combined GDP of over $3 trillion. And in terms of the operational phase of the agreement itself, it was launched sometime in 2019, July 7 specifically, at the Africa Union Extraordinary Summit. And currently, we do have 54 countries that have signed up to the agreement, while we have 36 countries that have deposited their instruments of ratification at the Secretariat. Again, that's one of the key requirements for the kickoff of the agreement. So in terms of trading, that kicked off on the 1st of January this year. And it's interesting to know, and I guess it's exciting times ahead in terms of what the agreement brings on us. But in order to narrow my focus, and I'm glad I haven't been asked to speak about the challenges, because I think the challenges are well documented. And upfront, I would say there's no human endeavor, there's no success of man that hasn't been fraught with challenges. But the good story or the good news about all of them is that we have recorded progress and success in spite of those challenges. So there will be challenges, and I won't spend so much time on the challenges, but I'll focus on what I see as the benefits and opportunities for the continent. So at a high level, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is focused on stimulating growth. As I said earlier on, it's about creating employment, it's about diversifying the economies across the continent. And that's done through the creation of a single market for goods and services. And at the heart of this, and how, or should I say, how is this going to be achieved? It's going to be achieved primarily through the removal of tariffs. And the estimate is 90% of tariffs, or 97 ultimately, but in the first phase, 90% of tariffs on goods, or tariffs on 90% of goods rather, tariffs on 90% of goods would be removed by the year 2030, and subsequently 7% will be removed down the line. But beyond the removal of tariff, and I guess that's the more critical part, is the dismantling of what is referred to as non-tariff barriers, things around policy inconsistency, we live with border and custom inefficiencies. So given the vision, given the goal, given the intention of the continental ranks significantly far behind other countries of the world. And years. The best estimate currently is that intra-Africa trade stands at somewhere around 17%. And that 17% is a significant far cry from other inter-regional trades that are happening in other inter-regional blocks. And if we look at, for instance, Europe, which most of us may be familiar with, the intra-regional trade within Europe stands at 64% currently. There's a lot of headroom to do more amongst ourselves. And by trading amongst ourselves, it's as a simple, should I say, practice, will keep the money within. I think locally, you say that when you trade within yourselves, you keep the money in the family, as it were. So we're able to keep the money, we're able to keep the prosperity, we're able to keep the growth within the family, within the continent. So a couple of points around the opportunities and benefits for me. But before I go into that, I think the caveat would be that this has to succeed for us to realize the benefits and opportunities. And if it does succeed, at the heart of it will be the growth or the boosting of intra-Africa trade from the low levels, as I said earlier on, 17% currently. And once there is velocity of trade, there's growth in trade, there's growth in trading activity, there ultimately that would translate to or promote industrialization, because then you begin to put in the infrastructure, the framework, the economic policies to enable, to sustain that growth. So beyond the fact that the agreement is one that creates prosperity as a broad vision or an aspirational goal of the agreement itself, is the specific steps or things that will happen towards creating that goal would be industrialization, would be economic growth, would be employment across the continent. And if we look at a lot of research has been done in that regard, and if we look at some of the studies, they give us somewhere between, in fact, the United Nations says somewhere between 50 to 52% of growth in intra-Africa trade over the next 5 to 10 years. So we can safely say or draw from that a lot in terms of growth or economic growth is linked to increase in trade. And trade has a direct correlation or a direct impact on reducing unemployment and ultimately creating economic prosperity, which is at the heart of this agreement itself. Now, some reflections in terms of what our views are. Now, given that this conference is happening in Tanzania, I would reflect on some East Africa scenarios or examples which might be relevant given the location of the conference. And in our view, if we look at the EAC, which is the East African Community, as a regional economic community, we've seen significant, or what I can call good traction in terms of intra-regional trade over the last couple of years. We stand to gain and we stand to realize from the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And those benefits that we see in the EAC can translate, or we can exponentially look at it or reflect it health challenges and uncertainties, also the economic toll it took on people and countries and economies across the world and even in Africa. But thanks in part due to the reduced reliance on offshore markets East Africa countries, specifically Tanzania, Ethiopia, evaded a recession in 2020. Looking at the IMF avoid a recession last year. Kenya, marginally, the impact wasn't significant. And the good news about Kenya is the fact that it's projected to grow at north of 7% in 2021 and possibly at north of 5% in 2022, which tells us that the resilient economic region was a strong base or foundation that enabled them withstand and cushion whatever shocks the pandemic might have, thrown at them last year. And that is the story that we want to tell of Africa going into the future with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. We believe that to achieve this, however, that policymakers need to ensure that the momentum that has been gained or the momentum behind the agreement itself, from the signing to the ratification and to the start of trading, that momentum needs to be sustained. And I say that particularly so because if we look back at 2020, personally for me and as a trade expert and someone who looks at trade trends, one of the positive lights from 2020 for me was the fact that in spite of all the challenges, all countries that were committed to the Continental Free Trade Agreement remained committed to it, in spite of the pandemic, in spite of the domestic pressures, in spite of the challenges the world had to confront. All countries that signed up to the agreement remained committed to the agreement, which clearly tells us that there is the political will to, and that needs to be backed with more action and energy. So the momentum clearly needs to continue. We can't afford to lose momentum to realize the opportunities and the benefits. And that's much so because to get out of the impact of COVID or the pandemic itself, a lot of stimulus would be generated on the back of economic activities or trade activities. And this remains a platform and initiative that will drive that significantly. So while we move towards ratification, while we move towards operationalization, we need to be mindful of the risk, and the risk is of losing momentum. We need to ensure that the desired economic boost and the slowdown in globalization, which is a trend we're seeing, or it started prior to COVID, but was clearly emphasized or highlighted by COVID. We've seen in terms of the pandemic around supply chains being disrupted, people or countries who had supply chains in Europe, who had supply chains in China, suddenly realized that they couldn't have their goods imported in, people couldn't fly to those geographies. They were curtailing clearly of, especially with COVID on shipping lines or transport platforms, airlines, shipping lines. A lot of that disrupted significantly a lot of supply chains. And the opportunity or the learning from that experience, in my view, is AFTA gives us a ticket or a platform to begin to build capacity from a tariff-friendly environment. 1, 2, in terms of dealing with neighboring countries where non-tariff barriers have been eliminated. This conference. I think it's important to have at the heart of realizing or reaping the benefits of the trading bloc itself. In addition, we need, and I speak as a banker, someone who works for a bank, we also need to begin to promote the creation of risk appetite. And that's in terms of enabling, supporting within the SME bucket. And as an example of that, I should say that we're looking at if there is, for instance, a institutions, commercial banks, and other stakeholders, custom authorities, price out of East Africa that wants to export its flowers. Because today it seems a lot more easier going to Europe as against within the continent. I think in wrapping up, I'd say that given the there's also the need to leverage and accelerate initiatives, Pan-African initiatives around settlement and payment, because one of the key barriers or constraints with respect to intra-Africa trade has also been highlighted as the ability to settle and pay. And the AFREXIM, which is the Africa Import and Export Bank, they are doing should I say, they're driving this significantly, or they're in the forefront of this in terms of driving PAPS. PAPS is the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, which would enable the settlement of cross-border trade in domestic currencies across the continent. So we would eliminate the need to go through foreign currencies to settle, eliminate the burden of settlement in 2 days, 3 days, at times might run into a week, almost, and at times you have to deal with the exchange risk and exchange losses that are associated with that. So that platform itself would enable and enhance the trading across countries, and more importantly, create benefits that countries can realize and individuals and corporates within those countries. And as Standard Bank, I should mention that we're constantly engaging AFREXIM to see how we can always leverage these initiatives and other Pan-African projects to benefit our clients and also benefit our countries. More importantly, I think there needs to be some focus on digitization of trade processes. As we may know, currently trade in Africa is largely reliant on physical documentation. And this has been a major impediment in terms of how we can seamlessly get things across the line. So AFTA itself gives us that opportunity to begin to digitize most of our trade processes, and more importantly, ensure that we can have seamless trade amongst our countries. On the final note, I believe that AFTA is a significant opportunity for the continent, and I hope that we see this as an opportunity to build momentum, to build our economies, to drive initiatives that would define a sustainable Africa as we begin to realign our supply chains, and more importantly, capitalize on the opportunity that's upon us, which is the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to take questions at this point.
Thank you so much, Sheung. I think perhaps it's important to just also lay some background. We've had, I think, someone in the National Secretariat in Nigeria from AFCTA, come through this morning to speak to us. I think in one of the last webinars, and with us. So, I mean, I'm waiting for the questions to come through, but there is one point you made that I'd like to lean in on. And the point is around digitization.
Documents to get the transaction done. Now, what does that tell us? With every requirement to either fill out a paper or execute a paper or submit a paper, is either one, an opportunity for error or an opportunity to create bottlenecks or inefficiencies. The thinking here is how can we begin to digitize these processes such that we have digital signatures? I don't need to submit a physical document. Can I sign digitally? And again, last year, if there's one thing last year has taught us, that there's a lot that can happen digitally or remotely or virtually. This conference is happening virtually. I'm sure prior years or prior to the pandemic, people will gather the physical location to have it. So it's about digital signatures that I don't need to physically go to an office to execute a form or submit it. It's about digital certificates. Today, I require certificates of origin, which need to be printed out physically. I need to go and pick it up. I need to use a runner. I need to use a custom agent. Can I begin to execute that digitally? Can I get a digital certificate that's sent to me and I can use that, send it to either the supplier or the buyer, depending on where I'm playing on the after corridor. I could either be importing or exporting. Can I use that? Or transport documents. Today, we say trade is over 400 years old in its structured form, since when we've been issuing letters of credit. But bill of ladings, which are the primary transport documents that facilitate trade, are still issued in paper form. Yeah, there's electronic versions of bill of ladings, but in most African countries today, it's still the physical bill of ladings that we still require to clear the goods. So in Nigeria, for example, if someone needs to clear his goods from the port, he still needs to come to the bank, pick up the physical, in fact, I should start from the supplier. They need to send the physical bill of lading to Nigeria before he can begin to clear his goods. If that bill of lading is delayed, and I use the example of the ash clouds a couple of years back, where planes couldn't fly because of the ash clouds, so DHL and the others couldn't send bill of ladings into the country. Goods were accumulating demurrage at the port, value was being lost, simply because physical documents couldn't reach us in Nigeria. So can we digitize that process such that electronic bill of ladings can become acceptable for the clearing of goods in Nigeria? So it's about the small things and also the big things in terms of the technology also. I hope that helps, but I wanted to touch more on the small things beyond the bigger things around the technology itself.
I mean, it helps greatly. I think just digitizing signatures is a very important, start. I'm also finding that, having a coalition, whether it be SADC or is the East African countries, having a coalition helps conversations, with digitization, because now you then have a structured community and you can facilitate that conversation, within that community. I think the last thing before we let you go is just how are we going to deal with our dependency on China? I mean, we talk about trade, but we each know that China has been a primary support, a primary stimulator of our supply chain for years. So what's the plan for China whilst we look at AFTA? And perhaps just the last piece is, how long do you think it'll take before we wrap up our relationship and Africa takes the frontal seat in lubricating supply chains?
I guess it's an interesting relationship, and I'm glad you bring up China, because interestingly, I was a couple of weeks ago looking at the data, and I looked at the Africa data, but more specifically Nigeria, that in spite of the contractions in 2020, Nigeria's trade with China grew 33% in 2020. So it grew from a 4.3 trillion naira to 5.2 trillion naira in 2020, in the year of the past. So the reliance is significant. But what we need, my view is, what we need to begin to do is to begin to engage with China as equal partners, as is often said, where we understand that there's a mutual benefit. And within that context, I think it allows us to say what is great about the partnership with China, how much of that can we learn to domesticate. Part of AFTA allows for investment in Nigeria, well, on the continent. I'll say Nigeria as a market, but investment on the continent. And one of the things we are seeing is that most multinationals and corporates and multinationals outside of the continent are also looking to have investment on the continent to serve the continent. So why do I need to have all the supply chain? A Chinese supplier based in China can begin to set up for sake of this conversation, in Rwanda, and to serve the sub-region, or might decide to set up in Nigeria to serve the sub-region, or depending if they think the outreach is big enough to serve the entire continent. So the engagement of the relationship with China, I think, it has to be a healthy one. It has to be one that portends benefits for us as a continent. Importantly, we can learn from the growth we've seen along those corridors to see how much of that we can domesticate and replicate as we journey on AFTA itself. On your second point, how long will it take to, I think there would always be entire relationships, and no country or no continent will be an island on its own. But I think what we are saying is not necessarily that we should cut ties or cut relationships with the rest of the world. No, not at all. But we're saying we should be able to, retain value domestically on the continent. A lot of exports from the continent today are pretty much commodities where there's limited or no value add in terms of what we export. And the real benefit and the real opportunity is the value add, where you have the manufacturing production capacity, you employ people, you generate domestic taxes, you generate export fees, which ultimately enhance the economy and ultimately drive economic growth. So I don't think we would ever come to that point where there will be absolute severance of relationship, but it will be a relationship that grows over time where we can compete as equal partners and not the lesser one.
Thank you so much, Jesu Shehu. Ladies and gentlemen, all right, I see that Kamal has a question. We will make it quite quick so that we can let on our next speaker. So over to you, Kamal, and I'm hoping that people are on standby to unmute you. Control room, can you please unmute Kamal, please?
Yes, done. Thank you very much, Kiro. Sorry, and thank you very much, Jesus Yon, for your very, very insightful remarks on trade in Africa. And I'm going to be quick here. Listen, I had this question like a couple of months ago from a very big company, a worldwide top 20 global company, asking one simple question, saying this free trade in Africa come in, it is a good opportunity for us. We want, this kind of companies that have 2-3 main global factories in China and other parts of the world, and they are exporting to everywhere from there. But they were interested when they saw these free trade agreement in Africa and saying, listen, it costs us much more to export from one country to another inside Africa than exporting directly, for example, to Morocco and to Nigeria and then to South Africa from the same place. But if it will come that we will have a better cost to export from, let's say, from South Africa to Morocco or from Morocco to Nigeria or something like that, we would be eager to come and invest and industrialize in one of the places. So can you help me to figure out this? Because we're talking about 2030, but do you think we can go to something like that in 2030? And can you help me, like, you're more a specialist than I am, can you help me answer such a question? And thank you again very much for the great insights. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Kamal. And I think I would say the best example I use, because most of us relate to it, is traveling in Africa. So oftentimes it's easier to fly to Europe and do a round way to Europe. And so if, let's say, for instance, I'm traveling to Senegal or to Liberia, it's easier to fly to Europe and have a flight back to Liberia or Senegal than to get a direct flight from Nigeria to Liberia. And I guess that contextualizes the challenge. So the platform, the infrastructure is lacking today, and the truth be told, it's lacking today. But the question often that is asked is, what do you get first, or what do you do first? Do you have a continental agreement, or do you have the infrastructure in place? And I almost think, I like using the phrase, you have to almost chew gum and walk at the same time. You have to do both. Because I think creating the framework would create the environment for infrastructure and investment and infrastructure to develop. I don't think there is a simple answer, easy answer, a silver bullet that solves this. And I think a lot of the discovery, and again, I read a bit of human history. Human history is littered with people discovering in terms of, just going out into the white lake and to the wild and discover. And I think a lot of things will be discovered over time. 2030 is an ambitious goal, I must tell you. Again, a lot of those estimates were prior to the pandemic, prior to COVID. But what is, and it's a personal philosophy, you shoot for the stars and you get the sky, You need to be bold, you need to be ambitious, and it needs to be daring. And even if you fall short, you've made progress. So what I would say specific to your client or the counterparties you've spoken to is that the time is now, because we have to start at some point, and the time is now. If we don't begin to lay the building blocks, we will never be ready to lay the building blocks. So a lot of things are unclear now. Again, for instance, some of the corporates we've spoken to talked about the lack of clarity around the tariffs, for instance. I personally believe that there needs to be a lot more clarity in terms of which tariffs will be reduced, which tariffs will be eliminated. So if, for instance, tariff on crude, for instance, would not be reduced or eliminated, and I'm an investor in crude, then maybe I would say, okay, I don't need to come into the market. But if tariff on, let's say, tea or cocoa would be reduced, then maybe I need to come into the market. So those kind of information need to still be put out. There are a lot of conversations that are happening around agreeing the rules around country of origin, which are still holding investment back rather. So it's a real concern, especially where you're putting capital on the table. But oftentimes, like every pioneer and all those who have discovered and built something great, there's always that trajectory you look at. And I guess the trajectory is that the opportunities on the continent, from a population, from a market size, from a geography spread, is significant. And because of that, I think if you want to be a player, you want to come in early to take advantage of the opportunities. I hope that helps in some way without providing a direct response.
Thank you so much, Esteseun. Thanks, Camille, for the question. I think that our time with you is now fast spent. So I think thank you so much, and I'm sure that we'll connect further. Cheers.
Thanks so very much, Minkuru, and thanks everyone for having me. Great deliberation.
Excellent. Thank you. So colleagues, right before we get into the next session, there's just one comment from Dr. Adamson Michael, and he talks about Africa needing to reorientate itself. So I think in the short form, Africa needs a reorientation. I suppose in our thinking and perhaps also in our approach to trade, since this conversation is also happening during, a trade panel. So we are going straight to our next speaker. And just before, I invite her, I'm going to say to you, we talked earlier about, missing human connection. So can I just ask that you pop in the chat to say, what is the one thing you miss from not having this as a physical conference? If you've been to Morocco, you've been to Kenya, if you've been to, yes, I think we've had Nairobi, which is Kenya. We have Rwanda. Can anyone remind me what we've had? We've had Morocco. So we've had Calabar in Nigeria.
We had Botswana.
Jane, I think that was you. Yes, we've had Botswana. Botswana was so lovely, I remember. So can you just pop in the chat and tell me one thing, just one thing you miss? I'll tell you what I missed just before I introduce the next speaker. Just pop in the chat and tell me one thing you miss. It's a virtual conference. I mean, I suppose the advantage is that we can all attend from the comfort of our homes, but just pop in the chat and tell me one thing you miss. What is that one thing you miss? What is that one thing you miss from not having a physical? Earlier on, I saw someone said they miss the Nigerians. Yes, I can see someone bringing in something. Someone says, I missed a chance to travel to new and incredible African cities. Yes. Kamal, that dance from Kigali was something. Yes, Mrs. Ali Balogu says she misses all the hugs, and so do I. Yes, that dance was something. I think also all our side activities and all our side events. Every year I take pictures with Asmao and, oh yes, I missed the hugs. And this year I'm not going to be able to take those pictures because, I mean, we're also not physically together. So just pop in the chat and say what it is you missed from the conference. And if you've never attended, any conference physically, we are trusting, that we will be able to gather again physically. So I think it's just to encourage you to say, be ready. It always is super, super fun. I mean, you can hear from all the comments, in the chat, what it is that people will miss and how it is that it goes. So I'm going to go straight into our next speaker. And if you are still popping into the chat, please keep popping what it is that you miss, from our physical gathering. We will go right straight into our next speaker. So our next speaker will be speaking to us about the role of public relations in the era of COVID-19. Now, there's no other person to speak to us but Ms. Win Musabanyana. And I'm going to just read her profile before I hand over the virtual floor to her. So Ms. Win Musabanyana is head of communication at the Africa Union Commission, which is where she's currently leading the union's communication on the COVID-19 pandemic. She's a former two-time award-winning TV and radio presenter in her native Zimbabwe. With experience in media and corporate communication in the private sector, and as well as international organizations, Ms. Win has developed and managed innovative communication strategies to address organizational needs in institutions. Institutions as diverse as Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, First Mutual Life Society of Zimbabwe, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, the International Federation of Red Cross Societies, and the UNPF. She's also an author and contributed to the Anthropology Township Girls, published by the Weaver Press. She holds a master's degree in journalism from the University of Wales in Cardiff and a Bachelor of Sociology honors from the University of Zimbabwe, as well as a diploma from the Christian College of Southern Africa in Harare, Zimbabwe. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please help me give a resounding welcome to her as she takes the virtual floor. Welcome, and I'm handing over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Ms. Nkiru Olumide, and thank you for that wonderful welcome. Thank you also to the Africa Public Relations Association for this opportunity to share some of our experiences from here at the African Union. So good afternoon to all colleagues and all protocols observed. So public relations professionals, the way I see it, have a very critical role in this era of COVID-19. Working with other communicators, they have the task of helping organizations to retain their legitimacy, not just for today, but even into the post-COVID-19 era. Now, legitimacy has great significance to the survival of institutions as it influences consumer and citizen behavior. The Africa CDC often reminds Africans that the coronavirus is now in the community and that community leadership, ownership, and response is going to be the answer in the fight against the pandemic. This, I think, presents a lot of opportunities for public relations professionals to adopt diversified corporate social responsibility programs that engage communities on their new realities and also contribute to societal well-being and, in the process, help to retain the confidence in their organizations. So today what I will do is to focus on public awareness around COVID-19 as part of that CSR. And I will also try and share some of the most critical messages that public relations and other communications professionals may find useful in their engagements with their stakeholders and communities. These are messages that I have learned from my work with the Africa CDC over the past 1.5 years that we have been dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Let me also emphasize the imperative for all messaging around this pandemic to be either from or prepared in association with approved and trusted institutions and experts. So, one of the key messages that I felt was important for us to get out of the way is the fact, which may seem simple, but the fact that COVID-19 is real and that we need to debunk the fake news and false claims around that reality of COVID-19. Incredible as it may sound, we do still have people that believe that COVID-19 is a hoax. But the facts tell us otherwise. When we look at the number of infections in Africa, last year in February, we had 2 COVID-19 cases. These were reported in Egypt. And today we are at nearly 5 million reported infections. And these statistics are statistics from our own governments, the governments of member states of the African Union. More than 128,000 Africans have died from the effects of COVID-19. Our case fatality rate is standing at 2.7%, which is higher than the 2.1% global average. These are only the recorded cases, it's important to keep in mind, because some cases go undetected and or unreported. And as we speak, the continent appears to be inching towards a 3rd wave, with negative implications for the capacity of our health sector, which is already fragile. More worrying is the fact that so far, each new wave has been more devastating than the last one. But on a positive note, the recovery rate is high and it stands at 90%. So consistently providing scientific facts, data, and solid evidence would be an antidote for this kind of misinformation and fake news. The second point I thought I would focus on is the issue of prevention. And when we talk about prevention, there are a number of subsets within the prevention of COVID-19. So firstly, let me talk to the issue of adherence to public health and social measures. So preventive public health and social measures include such things as the washing of hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, masking up in public places, maintaining the recommended physical distance, staying away from large gatherings, covering up our coughs, not touching our eyes and mouths without washing our hands, opening windows, self-isolation, etc. When risk communicators speak, they advise us that communities perform best when doing something that they feel is in their control. And on communicating about this, public health and social measures are definitely something that communities can control and can take a lead on in terms of implementation. Sharing of experiences from elsewhere will also help strengthen the case about prevention. So let us look at the case of India. Between February and March into April this year, the African and Indian COVID-19 epidemiological curves were very similar, but the beginning of May saw an almost perpendicular rise in cases and deaths in India. The Times of India newspaper reported that the exponential increase was caused in part by the relaxation of public health measures, especially the allowance of huge gatherings with little or no public health measures in place. And in that kind of environment, new variants also took hold. Consequently, hospital bed capacity was strained, ICUs in the major cities were full to capacity, and there was a shortage of oxygen. At its peak, India was recording 400,000 new infections per day. That is more than the population of some of our smaller capital cities in Africa being infected in one day. So, public health experts then advise us as communicators that if communities implement what has been scientifically proven to work, that is, public health and social measures, Africa can avoid such a situation. The second issue on prevention is on vaccination. So the Africa CDC has a simple equation on this one, and it goes, vaccines plus vaccination equals lives saved and economies saved. This means that we as communicators need to help boost vaccine take-up in the communities that we serve. The US recently advised that people who are fully vaccinated may no longer need to wear masks nor to physically distance. This, they said, was based on the continued downward trajectory of cases, the scientific data on the performance of vaccines, and an understanding of how the virus spreads. Similar advice is emerging elsewhere. We hear this on TV and on radio. Let me add a caveat here that Africa is not yet at the point of advising people to stop wearing masks. This is just an example of what is possible with vaccinations and vaccines in order to inspire our communities to take up vaccination. Still on the issue of vaccination, an agreement between the African Union through the Africa CDC and Johnson & Johnson will see the availability of 220 million vaccine doses coming into the continent, or at least they'll be coming from South Africa, so they're being manufactured locally. But at that time, in the third quarter, we will see 220 million doses being available with an option for 180 million more, bringing the total under that agreement to 400 million. The goal here is to administer 750 million doses to achieve population immunity in Africa. So when we look at the figures, we see that that agreement will cater for more than half of our target vaccination numbers in Africa. Now, there are opportunities there for advocacy as well as lobbying by public relations professionals and communications experts in terms of encouraging member states to take up their vaccine allocations using the Africa Medical Supply Platform, and that is available at www.amsp.africa. That agreement is also being handled, or at least backed up, by Afreximbank. And the other point of lobbying with regards to this is for member states to vaccinate at scale and with speed. We need to have speed in terms of the vaccination because every dose is precious. We can't afford to throw any doses away. The vaccine market is very, very tight. Vaccination is quite low in Africa at the moment, and we are standing at 1.4%. If we take that 750 million and put it in terms of percentages on the continent, we see that we need to get to 60% to achieve population immunity, and we are at 1.4%. So there is a lot of work to be done in terms of encouraging our member states to purchase those vaccines on that platform, and also to encourage communities to get vaccinated. Lastly, on prevention is the issue of testing. And again, here I'm going to give you a slogan from the Africa CDC, and they say, if you test, you find. And if you don't test, you don't find. This is what the Africa CDC says. And why is it necessary to test? A recent Sero survey that was reported on last week showed that in some countries, up to 20 out of every 100 people have been exposed to the virus. Testing, therefore, helps scientists to know where we are with the virus and to adapt strategies and response activities. So I'm done with the prevention part. Let's now move on to another point where I feel that messages and campaigns could be crafted around. So the third message is that COVID is negatively impacting our socio-economic status. On the 12th of March, the African Development Bank stated that the COVID-19 pandemic has taken a massive toll on Africa and has deepened the existing inequalities. And we find that communities find themselves challenged economically, health-wise, and socially. So sending out messages that link the pandemic to our socio-economic status and establishing that relationship would be helpful in convincing communities to take responsibility for defeating the virus. Message number 4. As PR and communications experts, we need to calm fears that have arisen during this COVID-19 period. The situation of the COVID-19 is fluid, and fluid situations bring about uncertainty and a fear of the unknown. People ask, when is this calamity going to end? And unfortunately, at this point, no one as yet has the answer to that question. The truth, though, is that what people need to know, what our communities, what our stakeholders need to know about COVID-19 is being updated every so often. New facts are coming up even for the scientists themselves. We are therefore advised as communicators, as public relations specialists, to keep ourselves updated to begin with, then to be upfront with our communities, to explain the facts calmly and clearly in order to calm the audience and to keep control of the narrative, as well as to verify and fact-check all messages with our trusted institutions and experts before publishing. We move on to message number 5. And this is about sharing homegrown best practices to encourage positive behaviors. Success stories from the continent are relatable and will serve the double purpose of 1, engaging stakeholders locally, as well as changing the perception about Africa more broadly. We do need a more positive narrative going out about our continent. And so if we make a deliberate effort to look for some of those success stories, we think that it would be very helpful in terms of helping us change our minds about ourselves. I heard a colleague talk about that just now, to say we need to change our mindsets, and I totally agree. So some of the good examples of positive stories that are coming out of this disaster that we call COVID-19 is firstly, that African leadership has been exceptional. There has been a lot of planning, structures have been put in place, partnerships have been established, and they were very quickly put in place. And they were underpinned by solidarity among Africans, coordination, collaboration, cooperation, and communication. And this has so far helped us to avoid the worst effects of the pandemic, such as the oft-quoted predicted catastrophe of 10 million deaths and bodies all over our streets in Africa. Another good news story that we could use would be to talk about the agreement that I spoke about earlier, that the African Union has signed with Johnson & Johnson for the 400 million vaccine doses. This will reassure millions of Africans that actually vaccines will be available, especially at this point when we hear on the news that India has imposed a ban on exports of the vaccines that are being manufactured there. It will also show that African institutions are working in the citizens' best interests. But at this point, I have to hark back to the fact that member states need to visit that website, amsp.africa, to purchase these drugs, these vaccines from Johnson & Johnson. Still on good news stories, we have a number of member states that are successfully bending their waves even without the use of a lot of vaccines. And examples and best practices can be found in Kenya and Cote d'Ivoire. From Rwanda, we have the story of the country having successfully administered 100% of its allocated vaccines that it got from the African Vaccine Acquisition Task Team. In South Africa leads the continent in testing and was last year ranked 19th in the world. So many lessons could be learned from these types of examples by both the communities and the governments as we together try to bring the COVID-19 to an end. Then let me move on to message number 6. And I thought I would talk about building the legitimacy of African institutions. What do I mean? According to the World Bank, they had a report in 2021, legitimacy of institutions is critical in ensuring effective public health responses to this pandemic. It stands to reason, therefore, that there must be high levels of confidence in the institutions that are dispensing public health messages in Africa. And those two major institutions are the African Union's Africa CDC and the United Nations World Health Organization. Even though it is less than 5 years old, the Africa CDC has received the highest recognition at continental and global levels based on the high quality of the data that it produces, its work ethic, and the leadership that it has shown in the response effort. Very importantly, as an African institution, it has a very big stake in the success of the response effort. So the role of PR professionals would be to continue to build the legitimacy of these trusted institutions among the communities that they serve in order to boost the chances of convincing stakeholders and, of course, ultimately leading back to ending the pandemic soon. Then in conclusion, I wish to highlight an example of an event that took place in March of 2020. US basketball star Steph Curry had a 28-minute interview with Dr. Anthony Fauci on COVID-19 on Instagram. That interview reached hundreds of thousands, both live and on archived versions. No doubt, there were many more eyeballs on other digital platforms, in addition to viewers on TV, listeners on radio, and readers of newspapers. So in terms of information dissemination, it was quite an innovative idea because it disrupted the normal menu on Instagram to bring a global health story to the platform's mostly youthful users. So I think you know where I'm going with this, colleagues. We have all the ingredients that made that event a success. So let's think about it. I wish you all a very happy Africa Day and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Wynne. I like the pillars, for which you have used, to speak to us about the challenges, that have been faced over the spirit, and I suppose what our role also is as communicators. There are a couple of questions in the chat box, but I'm also going to encourage our colleagues who are here. If you would like to ask a question directly, please put up your hands and then we'll unmute you, or you can unmute yourself and then you can ask the questions directly. But I think just first, there was a message, I'm not sure who from, but I remember that, yes, it was from Desiree Gomes, and she says, has your messaging on vaccination changed now that there is a shortage of the vaccines? Has your messaging on vaccination changed now that there is a shortage of vaccines? Colleagues, can you please keep the questions coming, or if you would like to raise up your hands to ask a question? Very important to ask her all of the questions that we're
But But what he encourages us to do is to go and get vaccinated. There are a number of vaccines that have been approved by the World Health Organization. So as much as possible, the Africa CDC does encourage people to continue getting vaccinated. Yes.
Cool. Thank you. Desiree, I'm not sure if that completely satisfies you, but this is a response at this time. Does anyone have any questions, any comments, any views? Otherwise, Dr. Ike says, what should be the focus of the PR messaging on vaccine, bearing in mind that setting resistance exists amongst the people? So there are people who are resisting taking the vaccine. What should the messaging be, you know, on the continent, you know, to them? Over to you, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Again, I am conferring the messages from both the Africa CDC and the WHO. So the main messages around that are that please do go and get vaccinated. That vaccination works together with public health and social measures, and that these two combined are the best way that we are going to get over COVID-19. So there is an acknowledgement and an acceptance that vaccine hesitancy is there, and that misinformation and disinformation is really driving this hesitancy. There are a lot of stories around vaccines, with some people going as far as saying that the very vaccine itself is the one that causes COVID-19. So as PR professionals, I think that our main messaging there is that, look, world, we have been getting vaccinated ever since we were babies. All of us have had those 5 or 6 or 7 injections, vaccinations that we get during the primary early childhood stage. So these vaccines are really not that much different in terms of them protecting you against the COVID-19 virus. So what the experts say is that the vaccination does not stop you from getting infected, for example, but it does significantly reduce the possibility of you getting seriously ill or even dying from COVID-19. We already have lost over 128,000 Africans. So the vaccines are safe, and the experts continue to put across this point. So that would really be what I think is the most important point, is to debunk the misinformation around vaccinations, to deal with this fear that people are being informed about vaccines, a lot of it which is not true. So as PR and communications experts, I think we have that role to debunk those myths and to instill confidence in the vaccination and the vaccination process.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think that as part of my work is that I do work across 14 countries on the continent. And what I find is that the people who actually do resist taking the vaccine have very strong stories, you know, stories of completely unfounded, you know, no research to support these claims. And, you know, in 1 or 2 markets, they only even just started the vaccination. So where do these stories come from? So I think we take your message, and one of it is continued debunking, continued debunking. The last question, I believe, okay, just a question and then a comment. So the comment is, there's a myth in circulation that says, if you take the COVID-19 vaccine, you indirectly be taking the 666 mark of the beast. What can be done to erase this belief? And what can be done to engage religious leaders in ensuring that members get vaccinated? So I think one is, there's a myth going around, how can we, or how can the religious leaders be engaged to debunk this myth? Yes, I think that's the short version of the question. Over to you, ma'am.
All right, thank you very much. The issue of the mark of the beast, COVID-19 vaccines causing COVID itself, COVID-19 causing sterilization, and so on. These are some of the major misinformation stories that
Sarah, I can see.
and if you look at our website, the Africa CDC website, you'll actually find that there is a section that talks about these false narratives around COVID-19. So as communications professionals and PR professionals, I think we also have that responsibility to go out there and look and take action against misinformation by being alert to it and then seeking to correct it in the way that we message as well as the way that we talk to our communities. Now, the issue of religious leaders, they are one of the key stakeholders in terms of promoting the messages around how to prevent COVID-19. So they are a target. The Africa CDC is working with religious leaders, with opinion leaders, and the WHO is also doing the same, because they have access to people on the ground. I think somebody mentioned earlier about communicating from the ground up. So these people have access to the people on the ground. They meet them every day. They are respected members of the community. They have influence. So what they say is believed. So I think we can say that they are legitimate opinion leaders in our societies. So they are a very, very integral part of the fight against misinformation, as well as also to encourage people to do what is necessary to fight this disease and just bring it to an end in Africa.
Great. Thank you so much for that response. We've got Sarah Kagingo who's trying to take the floor. Sarah, can you go ahead, please?
Thank you, colleagues. I'm speaking from Uganda, and I wish you a happy Africa Day. Now, our experience in Uganda has been a very interesting one. You recall that at the beginning of this pandemic, the world bodies predicted doom for Africa, and that would be dying en masse. This wasn't the case in Uganda, not in the case in Africa. Actually, in Uganda, we limited the spread. We have been ranked among, I think, the only African country among the 10 that have done very well in the world. Now, the question is, while it is indeed true that there are a lot of myths and where successes have been achieved, say in Uganda, limiting the spread of COVID and Ebola earlier and AIDS, that the successes have been largely due to science-led communication. You see challenges now where even I am bothered actually by the fact that we don't know yet if, for example, AstraZeneca that's being administered in Uganda and most of the African countries offers protection to all United States CDC citizens, that they can actually move out without a mask if they have completed vaccination. So does the Africa, my question therefore is, given the contradictions of what our experiences have been versus what was projected around the world about Africa, is there research that's being conducted by the African Union regarding advisories were that human beings above 50 are more at risk than the younger ones. Now, with the new strains, you see much younger people, even children, getting vaccines. Yet, in most of the countries, I mean, getting COVID, in most of the countries, these vaccines are being administered to health workers, to teachers, to actually human beings above 50. what then happens to our children? Do we continue to follow what's happening around the world, or is there a specific studies being conducted under the auspices of the African Union that the rest of the member states should follow, given our individual experiences? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think one of the principles that we have as communicators is not to delve into issues that you are not totally competent about. And this is one case where I'm really not competent to respond, because it is talking about the science, the details of the science. What I would advise for colleagues who have questions of this nature is to write your questions down. We have press conferences every Thursday at 11 o'clock East African time. So when you send me those questions, then I put them to the experts. So you then get to hear the details and the facts from the experts in that field. I think that that would be the best way for me to respond to that question. I will put my email address on the chat so that those who have these kinds of questions that need deep scientific knowledge could put them down, and then the Africa CDC director could then respond to them on Thursday. I hope that that response satisfies you.
That is, I mean, I suppose this is where we are at this point. So happy, we can pass, get secretaries can articulate that in a written form, pass it to you. Yes. We've got just 2 questions, and I'm afraid we can only take this to, I know that I can see Dr. Egbas's hands up. So Dr. Egbas, can you please unmute yourself and take the floor? Over to you, thanks.
Thank you very much. It's been really an exponential time. I've enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for the wonderful job you've done. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Carry on.
Okay. I just have 2 questions. It's nice. I already put the questions down before our friend from the AU said he'll provide a meal. But I would like us to think deeply about Africa's dependency of vaccines and all of that from the rest of the world. Sometimes as a continent who are not also lacking in manpower. Is the AU seriously looking at how we could develop some level of self-sufficiency in vaccine productions? So that will help us move from that 1.4 she said we are right now to where we should be. Then the second thing I would like to also add, which is a bit technical, but I don't know if she'll probably pass it on to the expert, but it's something we need to be looking at the rest of Africa. Which of these vaccines that are coming into, is there any research that has been done on a holistic level to which of this, about the possibility that one of these vaccines, whether AstraZeneca or J&J, that maybe one may better suit our kind of climate and all of that. I think those are things we need to look at. We'd like people at the CDC to be able to advise us as a body of a continent. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Egbas. Over to you, Ms. Wynne.
Thank you very much. From the 2 questions that you've asked me, I will attempt to answer the first one, because again, the second one is deep into the science. So I would suggest also that perhaps you can write that to me on an email, and I would put it to Dr. John on Thursday for you to get a more comprehensive response. But in terms of looking at the production of vaccines, I don't know if you remember a few weeks ago, Africa held a huge summit involving ministers of health as well as heads of state and government, specifically looking at how to get Africa to start producing vaccines. Now, we do produce vaccines, but not COVID-19 vaccines. So if I remember correctly, what Dr. John normally says is that the capacity is there. And I think he points to a number of countries within the continent that already have capacity to produce vaccines. And that is where this issue of the waiver on patents, that whole argument then comes in to say if those patents were made available, then some of these institutions could also start to manufacture the COVID-19 vaccines. But also just to highlight to you that Dr. John is actually currently in South Africa at the Aspen manufacturing plant. And that is the plant that is manufacturing the Johnson & Johnson vaccines, those 400 million that I spoke about earlier. So this is the broad picture that I can paint for you, that already there are plants in Africa that are manufacturing vaccines, that is the Aspen, but also that the discussions are really being held at the highest of levels on the African continent. And if you don't mind, Doctor, if you have any specific questions or details that you would like, again, I would encourage you to put it directly to Dr. John through writing that email to me, and I will put forward your question for you.
Thank you so much. Now, the last question would be from Mrs. Ali Balogu. Would you take the virtual floor, Mrs. Ali Balogu, please? Thanks.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying, Nkiru, that you've done such an excellent job at moderating. You've added a lot of color to it, and I'll say well done. My question is this. Thank you for that presentation, Madam Wynne. I liked it very much. But I want to ask, because I get very worried. We get to the rural areas, we get to the common people, something keeps resonating. And that is, I know somebody has mentioned it before, and that is the fact that the vaccine comes with a lot of long-term implication. For instance, all the conspiracy theories going around it. Oh, if you're over 60, you are the kind of people they want to eliminate. And in 3 years, the vaccine will start having impact on you and you die off, okay? And then there's this one that says after some time to work on your DNA and it will affect you and the whole lot, your physiology and everything was gonna change. My question is this. I don't see an aggressive effort, considering the enormous import you have put on. Because they are afraid of the future implication, not even today's. So what are you doing about that? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. It really is a communications question. So the way that I can respond to it is that we have set up a number of communication channels to try and reach as many people as possible. So we have regular virtual meetings with different sectors of the African society. This is the Africa CDC that has these meetings. So they engage academics, they engage church leaders, they engage other opinion leaders, they engage a whole lot of different experts at country level. And these are held regularly. And they come out on all the social media channels that are available to us. So they come out on Facebook, they come out on Twitter, there's a link from Twitter, and they're also posted on YouTube. This is to try and provide as much information as possible. Then within the communications, because there is a different kind of communications that public health experts also do, they also have those community-based outreach communicators who actually go out there and talk to people in the streets. And the Africa CDC has deployed quite a number in a number of countries where the need has been found. And again, Dr. John can give the details of the numbers of people that the Africa CDC has put out there to do this community outreach. But in addition, since we are all now doing the digital communication, we have set up a number of WhatsApp groups, not so much to reach communities, but reach people like you, my colleagues, who have an interest in spreading the word to the very last, well, not to the very last, but to do the last mile communications to reach the people in the rural areas that you are talking about. So we then engage with people on WhatsApp. We have people who are available to take your questions and to respond to you almost in real time, so that the information is as current as possible. And then I want to go back to the issue that I raised earlier about our role as communicators, really to take the information from these institutions and to take it to the ground. We have public relations professionals have a number of tools and channels and platforms that they can utilize in order to reach different stakeholders. And so it is for that purpose that it was felt that it's good that we participate in this webinar, so that you can then be aware that the information is there. But as information goes, I can speak to you today, but the person in your household will not know what I spoke to you about today. So we need to work together. All the different communicators in Africa really need to come together. And when I speak about this, I'm talking about the media people, I'm talking about public relations people, I'm talking about corporate communicators like me, bloggers, and so on, everybody. This is a situation that is affecting the whole continent. And one organization using its own platforms is not going to reach everybody in Africa. So I think this is where you come in, this is where the media come in to say, Africa CDC or WHO, here we are. Your website says this. What about this? What about that? And the experts are there and available to provide you with the information that you require. So this would really be my response, to say we are doing our part from the African Union side. WHO, which we work very closely with, is also doing their part, but there is a role for every single person in the communications field to make sure that the people in the rural areas also understand. Remember, there's an issue of language as well. So some of our institutions are bound by the languages that we use. The African Union has 6. I think the UN also has 6 or 4, I can't remember. But how many languages do we have in Africa? So we need then to have people who are able to speak to people in the languages and using the culture that is acceptable in those communities. So this has really been the crux of our appeal, to say, let us work together to take this information out, because really, if ever there was a time when we can say that information can make the difference between life and death, this is it. So we really do need to work together.
Thank you. So thank you so much, Ms. Wynne, for this very extensive conversation and for responding, you know, to the questions. But I think also for the frankness to say, I will direct you straight to the subject matter experts. So the Secretariat will articulate these questions and email them to you. But I think that what I pick out from one of your closing comments is to say that this is a partnership, and that you would like to partner with each and every one on this call to drive the messaging home. So thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please give her a virtual hand clap? Don't be tired, we're doing quite great. We're doing quite great. Only 2 items left on the agenda and we're good to go. So thank you so much, ma'am. And see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, we are making very good progress, very good progress. I'm fully conscious that is about 1:31 in Morocco, perhaps 2:31 in Ghana, perhaps 5:31, if I'm correct, in Nairobi, and 3:31 in South Africa. So don't worry, we're fully conscious of the time. We've only got 2 items and we're good to go. First, there's a poll that we need for you to fill out. Very quick poll, no more than 4 questions. Can you please very quickly fill out the poll? It'll be great to get your feedback. This is one way in which we can improve, the Secretariat can improve the type of service that they provide to us each year. So please fill it out, that would be great. The second thing I would like us to do very quickly is to watch what we call our throwback video. I hope that many of us here would see ourselves and recognize our friends. So over to you, the control room, so we can have a quick look at the throwback video. I can see Afia, but I can't hear her. And Afia, are you on this call though? Greening, I can see Afia, we can hear. Control room, I think in the digital world, we're quite gracious with this thing. So perhaps you want to start again. Okay, we can see her, but we cannot hear her, not unless it's peculiar to me. Cool, okay, cool. I think that one of the things that we've learned in the digital sphere is to be quite gracious because these things do happen. Again, I can see Afia, but for some reason I can't hear her. Okay, this video is so important to me because I'm so keen to see.
We have not been together and it's been very... Hello, my name is Ifiadra. I'm from Accra, Ghana, and I work with the Trust Hospital here in Accra. I miss APRA conferences so much. I miss the in-person conference. For 2 years, we have not been together, and it's been very, very disheartening. I am hoping that when the world opens up again, we will meet again for insightful, for knowledge sharing, and for the networking that I've always loved about APRA. Now that we are going online, I know that the content is still great, and it's going to be nothing short of everything we have always been receiving at these conferences. I hope that we will meet again next year in person, and we'll be able to hug each other again the African way.
Hello, colleagues across the African continent. My name is Wole Olaoye from Nigeria. I have been a regular at APRA conferences. It's been a new world that we are not able to gather as we used to. We all looked forward to APRA conferences, but with COVID now, it's a shame that we can't gather together to share ideas, to enrich our knowledge, and create a kind of multiversity of ideas which renewed our commitment and refreshed our various perspectives in terms of creativity. But not too bad. We are still able to gather virtually. And I wish us all a wonderful virtual conference with best wishes that in the not too distant future, perhaps next year, we'll be able to gather physically again and welcome back the nice times. Happy Africa Day to everybody. One Africa.
Hi everybody, I'm Robin de Villiers and I'm from South Africa. I've attended many APRA conferences over the years, the first one being in Mauritius, and I don't think I've missed one since then. What I have missed, since we haven't been able to do it since the beginning of COVID, is the vibrant colors and the beautiful outfits of all the different people from different countries in Africa. I've missed the music, I've missed the flag parade, I've missed the laughter, and I've missed the hugs. It feels as though when you come to an APRA conference, you have a chance to come home once a year to your APRA family, which is very important to me. Happy Africa Day, everybody, and One Africa.
Apologies about that. I kept grinning at the video and not wanting the video to end. Very heartwarming to see Afia, to see Robing, and to see Wale. Indeed, we do miss, all the hugs, all the foods, all the hangouts, learning about new places that we would otherwise not have voluntarily gone to, but for the conferences. Now, I'd like to invite someone to do the wrap up for us this afternoon, and then we'll take a final announcement and then close the conference. So really quickly, I'd like to invite Managing Partner for Songa Communications, Henry Rugamba. May we please not be tired and give him a virtual round of applause. Inviting you to take the virtual floor. Thank you. Henry Rugamba, over to you. Thank you, Stephen, for clapping. I'm Wale, I see you.
Hey, Kiro, thank you so much. You've done an excellent job today. It's been amazing. You haven't seen the question, but the question was, how do you keep so fresh and so steady the whole day? Well done. Happy Africa Day to everybody from an evening happening now in Kampala. I'd just like to say that we had a fantastic afternoon. I got two messages from our two speakers this afternoon. The first one was for our ratification of the Africa Free Trade Area, momentum. That was the message, momentum. And then just now from Win, who of course, being a professional like us in PR, took the brunt of the questions, and she did them so well. I loved her messaging, her 6 pillars that she shared with us. I think vaccinate for life, for the economy. We should be the messengers of this hope and this determination, because the frustration everybody has expressed about not being physical today is because we're not yet all vaccinated, we're not yet all secure. So we need to do this and make sure that 2022, we shall meet, shake hands, hug, and celebrate Africa once again. To the whole team at the Secretariat, under the guide of the President, thank you very much for a great opening day. I don't know, I took so many notes when the President of AU was the bank was speaking, and it was great. So guys, have a wonderful evening. Make sure that you join the group tomorrow for the second part of the conference, and let's do this. Thank you, and have a nice evening wherever you are.
Thank you so much, Henry, for this very hearty summary. So ladies and gentlemen, we have formally come to an end of day 1. You did hear the summary that just went through. I'd like to say to you that tomorrow promises to be even more interesting. We've got speakers from the UK. We've got a conversation around trust, remembering that trust is the most demanded tool from corporates or from governments, of us. And our role is to create this trust between the society and create this trust between the society and the organization or the corporate. So I'm going to encourage you to, 1, before you shut through, please fill the poll. 2, make sure you network. And 3, remember to show up early. Otherwise, all the way from here in Johannesburg, South Africa, I'd like to wish you a very, very good evening. Blessings. Secretaries, can we have some African music? Our opening music. Secretaries, can we have some of our opening music, even as we say One Africa? Thank you, everyone. Thank you for engaging. Thank you so much. So important that it wasn't. Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And Bamalu says, Secretaries, can we have our opening signature tune? It was interesting. Well done, Team APRA. Thank you, everyone. Great first day. Thank you. I'm so excited and looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Nkiru. Thank you, Nkiru. Thank you for handling it so well. Thank you very much. We appreciate you.
Thank you
so
much. Thank you, my leader, and speak to everyone again tomorrow. Blessings. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye. Secretary, as we missed the music. You. You.
Yemi Alade, oh. No, no, no. I hear the sound of a tambourino. Talking drums and Shekere combination. I see people under the tambourino. Dancing, I guess there is a celebration. Mama, walongo logo, lego. I'm the only one at home. All I want to do now is dance wombo lumbo. So I lock up and keep Kokorola Begondo. I can't tell where do they have to, yeah. Come see my picking at the Arubo de Dan Colombo. Wombo lumbo.
Jeresalema, ikayalami, ilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishilo. Uhambe nami, zungangishilana. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze, zuhambe nami. Dawo yami ayikholana, buso wami awukholana. Ilondoloze, zuhambe nami. Ilondoloze, ilondoloze, ilondoloze.
I think her internet is buffering. I think her internet is buffering. Nana? Can you unmute Nana, please?
Yes, okay, I'm now unmuted.
Okay, cool stuff. Nana,
Can
over
you
to
hear
you.
me? Yes,
Yes,
thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you and congratulations. You've been awesome, awesome today.
Thank you.
I love your passion. I feel your passion. I am also that kind of person with a lot of energy and all. And I am a PR communications practitioner, been in the system for over 20 years, started as a journalist, and then where I am right now, I work with a company called the Just Pond Group of Companies. It's a Ghanaian group company. It's a group of companies with over 60 different subsidiaries. We are the biggest waste management company in Ghana and parts of Africa. And I'm the Chief Corporate Communications Officer. Very passionate about the youth, very passionate about young girls. I believe that nobody is indispensable, but you can make yourself irreplaceable. And I love to be with the youth. I love to be with people with positive energy, because I believe that I am because you and if you're not there, I am not there without God. And so today I'm celebrating Africa in a grand style. I have something Ghanaian, something Kenyan, something South African, I suspect. And it's such a pleasure and an honor being on this platform. And I want to hand over to Colin Haber.
Yay.
Colin Haber.
So Colin, over to you. You have the Colin, can you hear us? Maybe we'll come back to Colin. Nana, to keep it going, do you want to choose someone else? Nana,
okay, let me choose Catherine.
Catherine Early, it's Robin de Villiers. Sorry, I'm using my daughter's laptop because mine has a problem. To get up and go and get myself a beverage, so I don't have anything with me that I can toast to the team with, but I do think that we should all toast to the APRA Secretariat and the team in the background that's put together such a brilliant Thursday.
True. I couldn't agree more.
I have water, so I can toast with my water.
And my water.
I'm taking a local drink. Hibiscus flower juice.
Ah, okay. Excellent, lovely. Robin, do you want to pick someone else? Because we're kind of passing the baton. Kind of like, do you want to pick anyone randomly?
Oh, it's Robin.
Yes. Robin, I think you're mute. I think you're mute. Is she able to unmute herself, Secretariat? Secretariat, is she able to unmute herself?
Fine. Did it work?
really help. Can you try to put, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, if we are networking, remember if we're doing this physically, we would, be doing it face to face. So may I please just encourage you to turn on your cameras. It would be so valuable, so helpful for some human connection. That said, I think it was Rahim that was called. May we hand over the floor to you really quickly, who you are, what you do. Rahim Olabode. Otherwise, may I please just hand over to Nuya Ghana. Nuya, I beg your pardon. Nuya, can you please take the floor? Nuya, so cameras on, and then you tell us about yourself. Okay, if Nuya is not here, I see that we've lost quite a couple of people. May we please hand the baton over to Shegu McMedal. Shegu McMedal. Okay, we seem to be passing all around our baton. Who else can I see on this side? Nana, I think it's just been you and I, and okay, can we pass the baton to Owo Kingsley? It looks like you and I are the only two people up for networking this evening. So Owo
It's
Kingsley.
amazing.
No, we're going to lean in on this tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Africa.
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I am based in South. If you've just joined us and you'd like to take the floor, what we're doing is saying our names, what we do, so people can meet us. And then if you'd like, you can drop your email details in the chat box if you like. Three of us. And it's quite an easy one. And you should unmute yourselves. Nana, myself, and Robin have been the only three persons who have connected today. Okay. Okay. All right. It feels like people perhaps have checked out. All right. Look, Nana, I think it has been a great pleasure to meet you.
Same here.
I'm
Same
sure
here.
that we will connect further.
No, somebody's here. Somebody's here. I think Victor is here.
Oh, is he?
Yes.
Ah, okay, lovely. Lovely.
Yes. Yes.
Hi.
Good afternoon. Greetings from South Africa and happy Africa Day. You see, I've got my
I know, right?
I've got my African peace crown, and I've got
Wonderful.
my calabash to celebrate, to toast to APRA.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations to APRA. My name is Victor, the past president and the current chief executive officer of the Public Relations Institute of Southern Africa. I would like to congratulate APRA and the Secretariat for a job well done. Pity I'm unable to attend the conference because I'm busy with corporate training in South Africa. But I just picked up the vibes that it went very well. And I wish you everything of the best. May APRA grow from strength to strength. May more members realize the importance of getting together and tackling the real issues that affect Africa. And don't allow any other people to tell our stories, but we tell our own stories as Africans, especially on this dynamic day where the APRA conference is happening on Africa Day. Good luck and everything of the best, and may the Almighty bless and make the team stronger and stronger. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victor. Very nice to meet you. Very nice to see you, and thank you for the kind greetings. We wish you happy Africa Day as well. We hope that before the conference ends, you can at least attend even one session. But you are correct. We had quite a good time. Our keynote speaker was quite amazing, you know, both with the information he left to us, but most especially with the charge, you know, that he gave us. So thank you so much again, Victor, Chair Prisa. I'm not sure if anyone has just joined us. It'll be great to take the floor. It'll be great to connect. We have exactly 9 minutes to go. Yeah, yes, his outfit is quite great. One Africa, yes, One Africa Victor. Okay, I mean, it feels like we're going to have to give ourselves bonus time and make an early start for tomorrow. So, ladies and gentlemen, very nice to have seen you, and I look forward to connecting further tomorrow. Cheers, blessings.
Yeah. But a quick question.
Yes, please.
Are we going to have recordings of the presentations?
Yes, we will.
Okay.
Right. Yes, we will. Yes, we will. I think the recording will be made available. I know that the Secretariat recorded. They might have a premise for distribution, but I'm sure they'll advise us.
All right.
Thanks so much.